Hey guys, welcome back to AFK Journey. In today's video, I wanted to talk about what I'm seeing as being the best free-to-play team in the game through the early game, and this is specifically looking at high deficit pushing and the results that I've been seeing. So I've been paying close attention to this for a while now, for probably at least 100 stages on like what teams are being used at the lowest power to clear these stages. And I want to go through what I've seen overwhelmingly about the teams that have been used. And what we're going to do is I've cleared 350, so we should be able to easily clap through 51, 52, 53, and maybe see how we go on 54. But this way, it will allow us to see those teams and the way they are functioning, and if you guys want to use these teams. Now, once again, keep in mind when we look at some of these teams that are being used at high deficits, they are also low ascension because these teams are based on power, the lowest power used to clear a stage. So if you do have other heroes at higher ascension, you may get more mileage out of those characters than these specific characters. Just keep that in mind. I'm not saying these are like the absolute best, but for the purpose of high deficit pushing and what people have been clearing with, I have been seeing the same essentially 6 units in every team basically the whole way along, and that's what people have been using at a high deficit. And I want to talk about that, and so you guys can, you know, maybe try and use these teams to help you push your progression. I obviously don't have these units, so I can't demonstrate them at the moment on this account. I could jump on my other one, but we're going to just show it on here so we can see some replays and see what we're looking at. But essentially, the units that I've seen in these teams, and it ranges whether they're using triple healer or whether they're using double tank. That's pretty much the 2 variants that we have in these teams. So the first character in these teams is going to be Cecilia. She's the main damage dealer every time, and what these comps focus around is sustaining to allow Cecilia to clap the enemy team, and that's pretty much what they do. Now, there's 2 tanks that I'm commonly seeing being used. The first one is Antandra. We all get some free copies, and they haven't even been highly ascended Antandra. Now, the great thing about Antandra and what she does is that she starts, and one of the advantages is she starts back. She doesn't engage straight away, so she can sit back, let your Brutus take some damage, then she can run forward. By the time Brutus pops his immortality, she can taunt. But also sometimes, even without a Brutus, Antandra can do this same role. She can just sit there and she can take a good chunk of damage even at low ascension. Now, it doesn't always work, but she is one of the tanks being used, and the other tank being used, who is actually technically a warrior, is Brutus. And I mentioned this in my 1 week chess video, that Brutus doesn't really have a purpose outside of this ability here where he gets his invulnerability, and that is primarily used for this high deficit pushing. And if you're not trying to push like really high deficits, then you don't need Brutus as much. So don't feel like you have to rush in, start like summoning for copies of Brutus. 1 copy is enough, and if you don't have it, if you got higher ascended other things, you can sometimes get away with it anyway. And like I said, in these teams, it doesn't always have Brutus, but Brutus is the other tank we are seeing used in these teams because of that invincibility. It allows him to absorb any amount of damage to let your back row do your thing. Now, that's 3 units we've mentioned. I'm about to mention 3 more, and yes, teams are only of 5 characters, but like I said, sometimes they use Cecilia with 2 tanks, 2 healers, and sometimes they use Cecilia with 3 healers and 1 tank. So that's the formations we're looking at. So the healers we're talking about is going to be Rowan. Rowan sometimes comes in here, sometimes he is out of it. Rowan's just good with his potions, his energy recovery. He's just got general greatness to his kit, essentially. So he is one of them. The other one is Smokey. Smokey, in my opinion, early game especially, best healer in the game. Just so much healing output from the very start and consistent. Unless he gets interrupted, that's his only issue. But if Smokey doesn't get interrupted, like this guy is just absolutely nuts with his healing throughput from his ring. It's stupid, essentially. And then the other one that we have, and I'm absolutely loving this character, is Coco, the newest character in the game. Coco is fantastic. The crazy thing about Coco is she gives this buff which gives your allies life drain, also reduces damage they take. They take it later, but essentially she slows down the burst killing of your allies with her ultimate and gives them lifesteal. The cool thing about this is with Cecilia, who is going to be most people's DPS in these teams, this lifesteal applies to Cecilia's Mr. Carlisle, the zombie dude that she summons, and so he can then tank really well. So if you're doing these teams with 1 tank, he can take over the tanking by the time your main tank dies, and it's really fantastic. And if you're running 2 tanks, tanks and 2 healers, or 3 healers and 1 tank. All of these synergies have just been working super well. And like I've said, it's the only thing I have seen from the highest deficit pushes in these stages as we go along. So as you can see here, this one is utilizing the triple healer and Brutus tank. So what I'm anticipating we will see in this one is pretty decent sustain on the Brutus, but he'll still pop invincibility pretty quick. But because we also have the Rowan, he might get an early ult, boost the Cecilia, and then Cecilia will have the capacity to get her Mr. Carlisle out, and then we'll basically essentially keep that Mr. Carlisle sustained through that point. So let's jump into this replay and have a look. You see Brutus taking damage, everyone grouped up to get as much healing in as possible. Brutus already popped his shield, he's back to full, but he's going to die pretty quick. And there we go, we get the Cecilia ult, and now we've got another tank. Now, Mr. Carlisle is up the back, and Brutus is still sustaining super well because we had that damage mitigation applied as well. But there we go, that's that one. Now we've still got so much sustain, like that Rowan finally getting dropped. And keep in mind, we will have units die in these stages because they're such high deficit, and like this is like hard pushing stages. So Mr. Carlisle's down again. Now we're going to get Carlisle up again. We get more control. He's there tanking. If we can get Coco's ult before he dies, you'll see that we get the extra mitigation, meaning he's not going to die. And look at Carlisle just absorbing all that damage, getting healed up by Smokey, and he's got the lifesteal. And he's like grouped up, so he gets all the benefits of all the healing, and this is how we're able to do that. So that is essentially what we are looking at in those teams. And basically, let's go in and let's clear this stage ourselves. So they're doing it like 72k, and if you look at my team, you can see we're at 94k if we run this full comp. What I've normally been doing is I've been doing a similar strat to some of these things. Obviously, I'm missing the Smokey, but I've been going for some double tank teams similar to this, where I let Thorin act as the Brutus. He's not as good as Brutus in certain situations, but I basically use this team. I lose out on a faction bonus, and it basically means Thorin dies. He comes back. While he's coming back, and Tundra holds the heat and keeps everyone alive, then hopefully I can get my Cecilia ult, and after Cecilia ult, we get Coco ultimate as well, which then helps Mr. Carlisle do more work. And that's basically the principle I've been operating off. Obviously, Smokey, if you have him, is huge for these teams. The amount of sustained healing that guy provides is just ridiculous, and he is super valuable. So I'm crossing my fingers that one day I will pull a copy on this account, because this account has had pretty amazing luck, except with Smokey, because we can't get ourselves a Smokey copy. But as you can see, like this same principle of this team, we're keeping groups, we're keeping healing, but you can imagine if we had a Smokey in amongst these healers, how much healing throughput we would actually have. And in that case, if I had Smokey, I'd probably just drop the Antandra and we'd be fine. Or I could even possibly drop my Thorin and keep the Antandra in, and that way I would get a faction bonus as well. But that's the principle. I am really loving Coco. If you're not using Coco, definitely test her out. She's an amazing character. Even in some of the the Dream Realm boss fights, she's doing fantastic there. So now let's jump into this next stage and let's take a look at what the high deficit players are pushing. So here, once again, we got Brutus, we got Smokey. Okay, so this one is the double tank team. Perfect. I wanted to show you guys both these combinations. Now, sometimes they will have maybe a Smokey and a Rowan, but often Rowan is the flex in and out healer that happens in this. And then sometimes it will have Brutus, and sometimes it will only have Antandra. This guy's got a higher ascended Brutus, so obviously he's going to get priority. Let's take a look at this one. You can see, same thing. So we're using, and obviously these guys will all have the same team because they probably just copy each other. But yeah, Brutus with the triple healer on, oh no, these are different teams. So that you can see this one is the triple healer. As I say, they'll have the same teams. They don't. And this one is the double tank. So let's go ahead and look at this double tank team. Now, the artifact they're using is the attack speed one for Cecilia at the back. Allows her to get Carlisle up a bit faster. So as you can see, they're just double tanking it, keeping that pressure on. Brutus finally dies, but now you still have two tanks. You have Antandra in the Smoky window, which is perfect. And you still have Carlisle up there taking all the aggro from the back. Then Carlisle gets the resummon. We kill their Carlisle, and it's just easy cruising. So, like I said, I feel like Brutus is substitutable out, but at these high deficits, like at these really high deficits, he's kind of the most functional just because you take so much damage. But if you're a little bit higher, you can try and sub Brutus out for other units. But the great synergy is that when you're running that Antandra, Brutus, Smokey, and Coco, you get a 4-piece bonus. It's sick. And worst case, you run Smokey, Coco, and Brutus or Antandra, you've still got a 3-piece bonus. You can throw that Rowan in, you lose out a little bit. But I think that is quite fantastic. And like I said, this is for early game, because keep in mind, as we move further into the game, people are going to have higher ascensions on characters. And once we move further into the game, that is when we really diversify what people will be using based on what dupes they have, what investment they've got, and what RNG their accounts has had. But in these early stages, it's like first week to 2 weeks, most people have similar style of rosters, and that way they can, you can get a good gauge of what is optimal at the moment. But, if people start getting Odie to Mythic Plus early, then you've got Odie, who's a fantastic DPS. People might start using that. And just keep in mind, the other thing is, and just because you see these teams at this power level and you're like, wow, that's crazy, you can still check the levels they're at. So we've got like level 90, level 90. These are all level 90s. Okay, so there's a level 100. So that's where it comes in. But you can check the levels, because just note, ascensions do give a lot to your team's power. So if you've got higher ascensions, that is something else to consider, that you might not be seeing other teams used in this, because maybe they got more dupes on other characters to make them more viable. But then because they've got the dupes, it puts their team power up, and that's why you don't see them. But as far as basic early game team for pushing through AFK stages and stuff, those are the 6 units that you will see everywhere at high deficits, being Brutus and Tandra for tanks, Smokey, Coco, and Rowan for healers, and Cecilia as DPS. And once again, as you go into these stages, you can check what they're using. You can check the replay to see how their formation works. You can also check what their artifact is, and you can go ahead and copy these formations and see if you can get the same results. But just note, moving forward, as we get into maybe week 3 of the game, this becomes a less viable strategy, because, everyone starts to have much different looking accounts, and the people who have accounts that look like yours, maybe they're not showing up on there because their power is too high. But this is the kind of thing I've been actually really enjoying. Basically this. Now, sometimes I wish I had another Graveborn tank or support that I could slap in that last roll. Like, yes, Niru, but he just insta-dies. So sometimes I'll run it like this, and that gives me a faction bonus. As you can see, it takes me up to 101k power. But sometimes I do need that double tank, and just running it in the Antandra is good enough. And if I had a Smokey, sometimes you can just, once again, drop the roll and put the Smokey in there. Yes, I'll use Thorin instead of Brutus, and then we can be pretty good as well like that. But this is basically what I have been running a lot of the time. Then sometimes if there's an annoying back row, I will change it to my Lightbearer core, use my Lightbearer core, and get my Vala out there to basically just deal with pesky back rows. Just keep in mind, these stages are super easy because I'm obviously overpowered for them, because it's still a 1, 2, 3 stage. But once we get up to 354 and 55, you'll see that we do get a lot harder. So let's check the next stage. Okay, we got to back out to get into it. So you must have to do it through here. Let's see what they're using here. You'll see same sort of thing. So we're using the double healer, double tank, Mauler core in this one, and that's what people are using. But it's just a handy thing to be able to look through and see. So let's punch through this one. We'll punch through the next 2 stages, or at least this stage, and see what the next stage is like. And as you can see, my Thorin, he drops super quick, even against these teams, which aren't overly powerful. And that's where the clutchness of Brutus comes in the deficit pushing, is that you guarantee yourself that 6 to 7 seconds, because it's a 5 seconds invulnerability. Plus you get, you get that extra little bit of time in the engagement and them getting him down to 1 HP. That really helps. So can we get an ult off, please? Dude, what? Dude, easy stages and we're failing. Easy stages and we're failing. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you guys too long with that. You get the idea. I think those 6 units make up the core progression of high deficit pushing in the early game. But once again, if you've got higher ascension on other characters, it's definitely going to change it up for you. Just wanted to let you guys know about that. That's what I have been seeing as I've been monitoring every stage I get through. I go ahead and I check the teams, because I've just been trying to see, what roughly is there. Now, I'm not sure if this is server based or global based, so other servers would have different things. But from most people I've spoken to have been paying attention to this, it's been pretty much the same across the board. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this one. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.